the maturity of a domain or a discipline is in the knowledge of knowing to ask the right questions. And science certain sciences mature, and they are known to mature by asking the right questions. And so I hope all of your efforts in this direction is garnered towards that. And so we are all here because we believe in the power of arts. We believe in the power of music, and be it an academician or a musician or a practitioner or a layman or somebody who has no understanding of either the aesthetics or the science behind music, we all use music for wellness in our lives in various capacities. All of us use music as a drug, if you will, to alter mood, to increase a sense of satisfaction, to feel alive. And also we are culturally very gifted. Being born in India, we're culturally very gifted to have been given various tools readily to engage with music as a tool for wellness. So if you backtrack and look at the globe, are we alone in this? Not really. Across the globe, there are anthropological studies have shown that there are no cultures without music in it, which means that music and the pursuit of music for wellness, for the sense of being alive, for creating meaning in one's life, has been a pursuit that we share with with the rest of the globe, and from time immemorial to now. So there are no cultures which are amusical. Even the most remotest tribal cultures across the globe have some form of identifiable music, either as an individual soloist pursuit or as a community activity that these tribes come together and sing or chant or dance, or engage in an instrumental ensemble that gives meaning to their community life or to their individual lives also. And if one takes an evolutionary view about why do we have music in our lives, what is the so many philosophers and thinkers, musicologists, music cognition specialists have thought about, what is this human obsession with music, what role and purpose does it serve humanity across the globe. If one takes a look at the creative economy that is put out there because of music, it is phenomenal and huge. Music is a very large creative industry, and that is like that because there is a huge consumer base. Every person in some way consumes some form of music or the other. So what people have asked as to what is this human obsession with music, what purpose does it serve? And Steven Pinker, a very famous musicologist, said that if one were to erase music from the face of the earth, the human evolution would proceed as it is. It would be virtually untouched, sort of giving a very subsidiary role to music in the evolutionary scale of mankind. I don't think so. I think as human beings, we commit a significant amount of energy to music, and we have committed a significant amount of energy as Homo sapiens and all of the evolutionary precursors that led to the modern man. Even animals, Shishurveti, Pashurveti, Veti, Gana Rasam Phanihi. There's a lot of documented quotations about how primitive animals, even fish, monkeys, they are able to cognize and respond to musical cues, if not at the level of organized music, if not at the level of music as we understand today, but they're able to understand and respond and communicate to each other using sound, using aspects of sound, vibration, frequency, amplitude, timbre, and so on. So this PTK, as you would call it, is to show that there is an intrinsic and a very very deep relationship between human need for wellness and music. And if you look at the evolution of of mankind and our evolution as societies, there is a very very strong link already that is established. So this link between music and wellness is not a new one. We've all seen it, we're all using it in everyday life. So what is, when we look at music as wellness today, what are the questions that we should ponder with? And what are the activities and perspectives that we could take to organize this into either an academic activity or a deployable endeavor that will touch the lives of everyday people using the many many gifts of our current civilization. So technology has most definitely exploded in our face, and it is making this Vedic Wellness University's very very timely um, discourse possible about what is the role that arts could play in our lives. Can we mine the Vedic knowledge today into this brave new world using technology, using the benefits of our civilization, the tools and technologies of our civilization? Can How can we mine this heritage, this intangible heritage, and how can we create, for the lack of a better word, products that will make our lives um, more steeped and stooped in wellness? So nobody here, either the attendees or the panelists, perhaps need an introduction to what Nada Yoga is and how sound in our culture has been used as a very, very effective vehicle of wellness. I think before we get into some of the other aspects that I would like to talk about, I think it's first very important to think about the difference between health and wellness. And this is important, although they have been used overlappingly and synonymously in various places. When you think of music in the health industry, when you think of music in the mental health industry, the demands that are placed in the deploying of various musical strategies or interventions would be quite different from the interventions and perspectives that one would take in taking music to a wellness industry. And I'm using the word industry not in the corporate industry sense, but any industry, any industriousness, so to speak, any industriousness of any either academic, entrepreneurial, or social, for that matter. So health by UNESCO has been defined as the lack, if not just the lack of illness or disease, but a sense of synergy and balance between the various systems of life in a person's being. Wellness, on the other hand, is seen as the active pursuit of of various choices that a person can make in terms of lifestyle, which will enable him to not just exist, but actually exist or persist, but actually thrive. And So obviously good health also means that one has to be in a thriving systemic and mental condition. But the idea of music and wellness currently, as we know today in the world, is seen as an active set of lifestyle choices. It's seen as a set of active habits. It's seen as a set of active tools and technologies that one may choose to do to enhance the quality of your life. So when you look at music in the health industry, so to speak, and when you look at music as therapy, I'm sure Dr. Meenakshi Ravi ma'am has touched upon all of these aspects. When you look at music as therapy, um, and music as a drug or a sonic pill that we would want to give to our patients for specific ailments, for specific disorders. There's a need to actually there's a need to take a reductionist approach. There needs to be a one-is-to-one relationship between the problem and the musical stimulus that's given. There needs to be a greater degree of specificity as to what you're prescribing and how that is going to act on the idea or the issue that is being addressed. Thirdly, targeting and mechanism of action. There needs to be a greater insight into the mechanism of action through which this musical stimulus that you are providing to the patient may have an impact on the mind. And often, what we have found with music therapy is that music does not work at that. Although we may like to think any larger systemic change also has to have a molecular basis to it. So the macrocosm is connected to the microcosm, and Indic knowledge tells us that from day one. But when it comes to music, often does not operate in this reductionist paradigm of one mechanism of action, one raga, or one musical structure to one mechanism of action and one specific target and goal. Music as an adjuvant therapy. I don't think, I respectfully would like to say that I think the Aditya Rangan's perspectives in the panel discussion on this will be very crucial. Music has been used not directly as therapy. It has been prescribed even in the Vedic idiom as a very strong wellness what do you say, prescription, for so to speak. So music as being an adjuvant therapy is more likely the direction in which that domain or discipline is likely to go. Music music as a systemic, non-reductionist wellness intervention is more likely to succeed because it does not need to fit into this scientific paradigms of reductionist scrutiny and interventions. So does it make music interventions any less scientific? Not really. And we're already seeing this. The National Institute for Health has, I think, initiated a $20 million grant on looking at music's impact on the mind, music's impact in affecting mood disorders, music's impact in enhancing wellness related goals for people with and without diseases. So similarly, in India, music as a wellness industry is a highly, I would say currently as we speak, is a highly disorganized sector. The stakeholders of this business or industry, if you will, or this domain or discipline are scattered in various different geospatial sectors. There are the academicians who perhaps work with neuroscience and music, and what perhaps with cognition and music, and they may not be directly dealing with the people who are using, let's say, neuroscience technology to assess brain waves and giving real-time biofeedback in the context of listening to music. But globally, you can see the emergence of various technologies which are actively using artificial intelligence, using neuroscience-based imaging technologies in this space. For example, Muse 1 and 2 are extraordinary successes out there in the world because you can wear this single electrode EEG headset and it reads your brain waves, you listen to music, and there is an artificially intelligent algorithm which reads the efficacy of the music you're listening to, and it changes the music that you are about to hear based on what it gathers about whether you are experiencing meditative states or whether you're experiencing low arousal, high arousal, high valence, low valence, and so on. So we see the emergence of these wellness industries and technologies at the intersection of several of these disciplines: neuroscience, psychology, musicology, imaging technologies, then epidemiology and sociology also, because social desirability is a great, for anybody who studied sociology, they will tell you that there is a certain demographic of people who will choose wellness and wellness related strategies for their life, and some who are less predisposed to like choosing such strategies in their life. So whatever is emerging in this as new in the music wellness sector is coming from a variety of stakeholders: academicians, practitioners, musicians, scholars, and clinicians, and clinician scholars, people who are leading dual identities like Dr. Geeta Bhatt and Meenakshi Ravi ma'am, who are trained in two different domains, and then in their own lives and in their own perspectives, in their own academic journeys, this thing comes together. And as a larger domain also, this is happening. And increasingly in the last year, you can see that music companies are increasingly spending on the wellness industry. So music for meditation, binaural beats. There is a huge untapped market in India, which will have to draw from its academic and traditional knowledge systems to actually make it happen. So clearly, um, we are blessed to be born with a musical tradition which has already thought very deeply and has thought about music and its impact on the mind for a very, very long time. And when I say for a very, very long time, it's a very, very long time. There are, from the Natya Shastra to contemporary musicological treatises, there is a large body of documented um, empirical data on how, for example, certain ragas with, let's say, a dominant Shadja Panchama Bhava or Shadja Madhyama Bhava, and how Bharata Muni thinks that in that idiom, certain intervals are more likely to lead to ragas which can be harnessed for either dhira or karuna or opposite rasas. The rasa theory in Indian aesthetics is staggeringly large and has already given us phenomenal perspectives on how this relationship between what is suggested through music and what is perceived by the sahridaya, as they call it, that is not a determinate relationship. That there is always a hit or miss. There's possibility of hit or miss between what is suggested and what is perceived. Finally, so in this case, what is given as a wellness motive and what is actually felt and experienced by the recipient of a wellness music wellness strategy. So we have a long history of musicology which has thought about these things. The rasa theory and Indian aesthetics are phenomenally gifted with knowledge which can be harnessed quite quickly, which can be translated quite quickly into music wellness strategies into the future. I'm extraordinarily optimistic about it. And overall, I feel that music in wellness, music as wellness, has capabilities to work at three levels: the sensory level itself, the swara, the sound, the vibration, the frequency, the amplitude, the timbre, all of these physical qualities of the swara or of music, its music at its sound level is capable of inducing various responses bodily and in the mind. Secondly, affective ways in which music wellness can be mediated. Music has great access to the emotions. It is actually, I think it is I don't remember who, but somebody said music is the passport to emotions. A very famous musician or a philosopher, I don't quite remember. The music is a shorthand to human emotions. All of us, almost all of us, use music to alter our feelings, to feel our feelings, to really make space for our feelings. You use music to like transgress through emotions. You're feeling sad, and most likely you will hear a sad song, and that match between the sad feeling that you have and the sad song that you may hear and your autobiographical memories with that song. So in a mathematical sense, that minus into minus becomes a wonderful plus, and you go through your emotions much more effectively in the presence of music. So music as an effective affective tool in music wellness will be something that will see great success in the days to come, I feel. Third way in which music wellness strategies could be classified is cognitive strategies, which work on the foundations of the mind, on the processes of the mind which make certain faculties possible. So when I say that, I mean memory. Memory is like a muscle, and anybody who has worked with children will tell you that it is a muscle that builds very quickly if the mediation is done right. And so memory, working memory, ability for executive control, all of these psychological faculties that a man needs to feel well, to function well, all of these faculties can be strengthened by active music making. So another way to think about wellness is whether you're using music in a passive paradigm, where you listen to something, where you experience something passively. You are not the subject of the music making. You're not the object. You're only the object which is receiving a certain stimulus or an experience. The second model on which some of this can be organized is an active model, where you make music. You sit and you drum up, maybe a jati in Trishra, Khanda, and when you go through all of those nadais and gati changes, maybe your mental gati also will change, and overall your cognitive faculties are more strengthened. So these are some of the three ways in which wellness strategies could be organized. Um, so coming to the state of the art, and I have expressed this in many of my previous talks also. India has not um, India has not the Indian space has not yet exploded with all of this kind of music wellness chatter, so to speak. And a good reason for that could be the lack of academic infrastructure, academic setups, and collaborations which allow for this highly interdisciplinary examination possible. So I'm very grateful to Vedic Wellness University for doing this. There needs to be more such discourse, more such interdisciplinary examination, and description of the problem and who we are. I mean, who we are with music and wellness, for example. That is a problem that we are dealing with today, right? What does it mean to feel well with music? And if you want to make a person feel really awesome with music, then what does that actually mean? I mean, what do you give him? What is a curatorial paradigm that you can prescribe to somebody who comes into your, if you're a clinician, if he comes into your office, then how do you actually mediate that? How do you negotiate that? How do you deploy some of these strategies? So these are very early questions in the, what do you say, an organized and a more systematic pursuit of music as wellness. Like I said, since time immemorial, we have been doing this very intuitively in our own personal lives. But when you think of a sector, when you think of an industry, when you think of an academic discipline in itself, I would say that the lack of academic boxes to fit into. For example, if I'm a music wellness researcher, it's very hard for me to find a place in a university setup in India currently, right? Where would I be? I would be a complete misfit in a neuroscience, molecular neuroscience, biomolecular neuroscience, neurobiology kind of a setup. Musicology departments in India are not doing this kind of work. There's hardly any, I wouldn't say any, but very little empirical research in the first place happens in musicology spaces. Most of it, not to demerit the work that is happening there, it is just an observation that this kind of wellness research is not happening there. And some other fabulous kinds of research and scrutiny into musicology is happening in musicology departments and institutions. Um, and then funding, everything runs on money. The Ministry of Culture, for example, I'm from the Ministry of Culture. There are no schemes, there are no funding mechanisms which would make this kind of highly interdisciplinary translational work possible. If somebody today wants to say, I want to study the impact of Neelambari on sleep effectiveness, just for, just as a matter of an example, and I want to bring in a technology that will enable Neelambari based strategies for the wellness industry. There's absolutely no private or governmental schemes that will fund that kind of translational research, other than hearsay. Like you can always say that, oh, according to our texts, Tyagaraja sang Neelambari and apparently everybody slept. And I feel highly calm when I sing Neelambari. Other than individual anecdotal and individual experiential descriptions, as a community, as a society, and if we have to like generate the research data for this kind of stuff, there are sorry to call a spade, there are no funding mechanisms involved to like enable the academician who wants to do this kind of research. And if there are any, please do let me know, because I would most definitely be interested in pursuing such an agency. Third thing is, there needs to be a deeper investment in our entrepreneurial motivations in this sector, because the first question is, how do we harness the knowledge that we already have into the music wellness strategies? The second question that this field begs is, okay, how are we going to deploy this? How are we going to give this wellness pill? Or is it going to be on smartphones with artificially intelligent analytics backed apps with electrodes and wearables? And how is this going, what is this going to look like? What is a music wellness paradigm going to look like in physical reality? So that's where the domain lies. And I think personally, I feel that technology is the way to go, because with wearable technology and with emerging neuroscience, this is a nice segue between music and wellness. And technology is going to play, is likely to, it's already and is more likely to play a very strong role in harnessing Indian classical music and folk music. Let us not forget that in wellness choices, right? Desirability um, is a very strong parameter. So folk music, popular music, they're all going to be equal players in this domain. Uh, people, so people will not look at label. People will look at their own choices. If a ghazal heals me, then that is what they will choose. If a Naushad movie number that you heard when you were 6 years old, and if that music makes you feel something, then that's what they're going to choose. They're less likely to choose something just because there are 20 papers saying that Raga X is going to create
affect why, because in the mind, uh, desirability trumps uh, thinking and cognition at that level. So we always choose what we want to choose based on how we feel about certain things, and those parameters are likely to play a very strong role in what is finally deployed in the music wellness industry. So yes, I'd like to close with these thoughts, and I look forward to the panel discussion to discuss with my very distinguished panelists about where we are, who we are, and where we are headed into the future. Thank you very much.